A falcon plunges from the sky, a living bolt of lightning striking its prey along the Nile. This breathtaking hunter was far more than a bird to the ancient Egyptians. It was a key to their entire worldview. We know they built pyramids and worshipped powerful pharaohs, but how did they master the art of training these wild falcons, turning a predator into a partner? You are about to uncover the lost secrets of how a civilization tamed the sky itself, forging a bond so profound it touched their gods, their throne, and their very survival. How do they accomplish this incredible feat without any of our modern knowledge? What does it truly take to build trust with a creature of the wind? That falcon diving toward the Nile was not merely a bird, it was a glimpse of a god. For the ancient Egyptians, the falcon was the living, breathing form of Horus, the great sky deity whose eyes were the sun and the moon. His incredible vision, able to spot the slightest movement from a dizzying height, was not just a biological trait, it was the all-seeing power of a god, piercing through deception and guarding the land. His breathtaking speed and unerring strike were not simple hunting skills. They represented divine justice, swift and decisive. This sacred connection was the very bedrock of Egyptian kingship. Every pharaoh who ever ruled was believed to be the living embodiment of Horus on earth. The falcon was not just a symbol of the king, it was the king's divine nature made visible. To look at a falcon was to witness the authority and protective power of the throne itself. This profound reverence meant that falcons were never just wild animals to be tamed. They were divine partners, and their training was a sacred dialogue between the human world and the realm of the gods. So how you approach a creature you believe holds the essence of a deity. The answer lies not in domination, but in an ancient and patient art of building trust. The proof of this sacred partnership is etched in stone and preserved in tomb. Step into the burial chamber of a nobleman named Nebamun, and the walls come alive with a vibrant hunting scene. You see him standing in a papyrus skiff, his trained falcon poised on his wrist. The bird's form is rendered with astonishing accuracy, every feather a testament to an artist who knew these creatures intimately. This was not merely decoration. It was a declaration of status, a record of a cherished skill, and a prayer for the afterlife, ensuring the nobleman could continue this divine hunt for eternity. Temple walls tell a similar story. Carved hieroglyphs and intricate reliefs speak of royal falconers, men of high rank entrusted with the care of the pharaoh's own birds. One inscription might detail the offerings of choice cuts of meat, while another commemorates a particularly successful hunt, an event worthy of recording for the gods. These are not casual mentions, they are official records, embedding the practice of falconry into the very fabric of state and religion. Perhaps the most poignant evidence lies not in art, but in the silent, sacred spaces of animal cemeteries. Here, archaeologists have uncovered countless falcon mummies, each one carefully and elaborately wrapped in fine linen. Some were even placed in their own decorated coffins. This was a level of care reserved for the most revered creatures. To mummify a falcon was to ensure its journey to the afterlife, to honor the god Horus it represented, and to affirm a bond that even death could not break. These preserved birds are the ultimate proof. They were not just tools for hunting, they were cherished companions, their lives valued so deeply that their bodies were prepared for an eternal existence alongside the humans they served. Securing a young falcon was a task of both immense danger and profound importance. The Egyptians primarily sought out ISs, young nestlings still in their cliffside areas. These locations were not easily accessible, perched high on the rocky escarpments that bordered the Nile Valley and stretched into the vast eastern desert. Reaching them required individuals with incredible skill and courage, men who would scale these sheer heights to carefully retrieve the birds. This perilous work was essential, for an IS taken from the nest at the right age would be naturally imprintable, its young mind open to forming a deep bond with its human caretakers. These nest robbers, as we might call them, were not merely climbers. They were selectors for the royal court and the elite households, their keen eyes judging which young bird showed the most promise. They looked for a certain alertness, a healthy vigor, a spark of the divine potential that made a falcon worthy of a pharaoh. Every successful retrieval was a triumph, delivering a blank slate, a young Horus who could be gently guided into a life of partnership. The entire system depended on this risky harvest from the wild, ensuring a steady supply of birds whose training could begin from their very first days among humans. This royal falconer held one of the most trusted positions in all of Egypt. He was far more than a simple bird keeper. He was a master of an ancient and complex science. His responsibilities began with the bird's very health, acting as both physician and apothecary. He needed an intimate knowledge of avian ailments, knowing which herbs could soothe a fever or which poultice could heal an injured wing. He studied their behavior with the focus of a scholar, learning to read the subtle shifts in a falcon's posture, the meaning behind a certain cry, the flicker in its eyes that signaled fear, curiosity, or hunger. This deep understanding was not written in formal scrolls, but was a living knowledge, passed in strict secrecy from a master to his apprentice, often from father to son, over countless generations. His social standing reflected this immense responsibility. The royal falconer was a high-ranking courtier, a man who walked the palace corridors and had the pharaoh's ear. His success was not a personal matter, it was a matter of state. When the pharaoh went on a royal hunt, the performance of his falcon was a direct reflection of the king's own divine power and the favor of the god Horus. A successful strike reinforced the pharaoh's strength and the kingdom's stability. A failed hunt, however, could be seen as an ill omen, a sign of divine displeasure. The weight on the falconer's wrist was not just the weight of a bird, but the weight of a dynasty's perceived connection to the heavens. His every action was dedicated to ensuring that connection remained unbroken. This lifelong partnership began in the quiet, secluded chambers of the royal falconry. Here, a newly acquired eyas, still covered in its fluffy white down, would enter a world of intentional devotion. The falconer became its entire universe. He was the sole provider of food, carefully offering tender strips of meat by hand. He was the source of warmth and comfort, allowing the young bird to perch on his wrist for hours at a time. This constant, gentle presence was not an accident. It was a carefully crafted strategy. The falcon's instinct to bond with its parent was redirected, seamlessly transferred onto the human who never left its side. In the bird's developing mind, this man was not a captor. He was family, the absolute source of all food and security. This foundational phase, known as imprinting, was the sacred core of the entire training process. A falcon that saw its handler as a parent would never truly see him as a threat. This deep-seated trust eliminated the need for force, creating a willing participant instead of a broken prisoner. The bond was reinforced with a simple, yet brilliant, auditory cue. The falconer would use a distinct whistle or a unique soft call every single time he presented food. The young bird's brain began to wire itself to that sound, linking it irrevocably with the pleasure of eating and the presence of its caregiver. That specific call would later become a powerful tool of recall, a sound that cut across distance and distraction, pulling the falcon back from a high-speed chase as reliably as a leash. This was not a trick. It was a language built between species, a language of trust, patience, and mutual need. Without this profound initial connection, all the advanced training in the world would have been impossible. The bird's legendary loyalty was not commanded. It was earned bite by careful bite in its first critical days and weeks of its life among humans. This deep bond was nurtured within a space designed as a sanctuary. The falcon's home, a structure we would later call a mews, was a masterpiece of ancient animal husbandry. It was not a cage, but a sheltered, airy enclosure, built to mimic the safety and comfort of a natural cliff face. Positioned to catch the Nile's breezes, it provided constant shade from the harsh sun while protecting its precious occupant from wind and rain. Perches of smooth, polished wood were set at different heights, allowing the bird to choose its preferred roost, just as it would on a rocky ledge in the wild. Every detail was considered to reduce stress and promote a state of calm readiness, making this space a peaceful retreat where the falcon could digest its meals, preen its feathers, and rest without fear. The tools of this sacred trade were equally thoughtful. Thin, supple leather straps called jesses were gently fitted around the bird's legs. These were not shackles but anchors, a way for the falconer to maintain a gentle physical connection with his charge. A longer leash, often made of braided hide, was attached to the jesses, allowing the bird to fly a short distance from the glove while remaining secure. The brilliant innovation that prevented a tangled disaster was the swivel, a small, rotating ring that connected the jesses to the leash. This simple device allowed the falcon to turn and move freely on the perch without twisting its lines into a dangerous knot. But the most psychologically insightful tool was the hood. Crafted from the finest, softest leather, it was designed to cover the falcon's eyes. In a world where sight is everything, plunging the bird into a calm, dark quiet was an act of kindness. It shielded the high-strung hunter from the overwhelming stimuli of the human world, sudden movements, flickering torchlight, other animals, allowing it to remain perfectly calm and focused until the moment it was time to hunt. These fundamental tools, the jesses, the leash, the swivel, and the hood, form the bedrock of falconry to this very day. It is almost certain that the ancient Egyptians, with their profound understanding of these birds, were the first to invent and refine this essential equipment, creating a system of gentle control that honored the falcon's wild spirit while integrating it safely into human society. That deep bond forged in the quiet muse now faced its greatest test, the chaotic, vibrant world of people. This next critical phase was known as manning, a slow and deliberate process of socialization. The falconer's goal was to build a bird of unshakable nerves, a companion so comfortable with humanity that the cacophony of a royal procession or the sudden shout on a hunt would not send it into a panic flight. To achieve this, the falcon became a near-constant presence on the gloved fist, carried for hours each day not in isolation, but directly into the heart of daily life. Imagine the young falcon, its sharp eyes taking in a dizzying array of new sights. It would see children playing, hear the clatter of pottery workshops, and smell the smoke of cooking fires. The falconer would walk it past livestock, allowing it to grow accustomed to the presence of goats, dogs, and other animals without triggering its prey drive. He might even take it on a boat, feeling the unsteady deck beneath its feet, or through the bustling market, where the din of bartering and the press of crowds provided the ultimate lesson in calm. Every strange sound, every unfamiliar movement was a potential source of fear. The falconer's role was to be the calm center of this storm, a steady, reassuring perch in a world of bewildering stimuli. Through his own stillness and the constant reward of a tidbit of food, he taught the bird a profound lesson that these human activities were not threats. This was not a process that could be rushed. It demanded immense patience, an almost supernatural ability to read the bird's slightest discomfort, and the skill to know when to push forward and when to retreat. A single negative experience, a sudden loud noise that truly frightened the bird, could undo weeks of careful work. The successful result was a falcon that viewed the world from its human perch with a regal detachment, its instincts honed for the hunt, not wasted on fear. This unflappable confidence was the final, essential layer of trust, transforming the imprinted youngster into a poised partner ready for the field and the court alike. The final test of this profound trust happened in the open air. With the falcon now unruffled by the human world, its training pivoted the sky, focusing on the single most vital behavior, the guaranteed return. This was not a matter of chance. It was a science perfected through a brilliant tool, the lure. Picture a simple object, a pair of bird wings bound together or a leather pouch stuffed with meat and feathers, all tied securely to the end of a long, strong cord. This was the lure, and in the hands of a master falconer, it became a magical device that could call a speeding predator back from the horizon. The process began on the ground, with the falcon perched on the glove. The falconer would let the bird eat its meal directly from the stationary lure, building a powerful and positive association. The lure was not a toy, it was the source of all good things. Then, the real lesson started. The falconer would swing the lure in a wide, enticing circle on its cord, creating a moving target that mimicked the erratic flight of a panicked bird. The moment the falcon launched from the glove and struck the swinging lure, it was immediately rewarded, allowed to tear into the meat tied within. This action-reward cycle was repeated countless times until the sight of that spinning lure triggered an irresistible instinct in the falcon. It became a promise of a sure meal, a powerful incentive to break off a fruitless chase and return to the falconer's fist. This training for the recall was the ultimate insurance policy. In the vast openness of a hunt, a falcon might pursue its quarry for a great distance and miss. A wild bird in that situation would simply fly off, its energy wasted. But a trained falcon had a different option. The falconer would cast the lure, that familiar, whirling signal in the sky. It was a call the bird understood on a primal level, a guaranteed feast that was far more reliable than continuing a difficult hunt. The bird would turn, lock its sharp eyes on the lure, and fly straight back, landing gracefully to claim its reward. This single skill, perfected over months of patient practice, transformed the falcon from a potential runaway into a loyal partner. It was the final, essential thread that bound the bird to the human, a tether not of leather, but of trust and mutual benefit, ensuring that every flight, whether successful or not, would end with a safe return home. Even with a perfect recall to the lure, the first true flight was a moment of immense risk. The falconer's solution was a brilliant intermediary step, a safety line, both literal and psychological, known as the creance. This was not a heavy rope, but a remarkably long, lightweight line, often made of braided sinew or flax, carefully attached to the bird's jesses. It was the essential bridge between the security of the glove and the terrifying freedom of the open sky, a way to test the bond without betting the bird's life on it. The process was a masterclass in patience. On a clear, calm morning in a wide open field, the falconer would begin with short, simple flights. He would place the bird on a low perch, step back just a few paces, and present his gloved fist with its familiar morsel of food. The falcon, eager and conditioned, would make the short hop to his hand. The creance would trail loosely behind, a mere whisper of a tether, offering no real resistance. With each success, the distance grew, 10 paces, then 20, then 50. The falcon was now flying a true, powered flight to reach him, building the muscle and stamina needed for the hunt. All the while, the thin line streamed behind, an almost unnoticed presence until the moment it gently went taut. This was its true purpose. If the bird, startled by a wild rabbit or a sudden gust of wind, decided to veer off course, the creance provided a soft, non-threatening check. It was a gentle reminder of the partnership, preventing a panic flight into the distance that could have ended with a lost and unprepared bird. Simultaneously, the falconer would integrate the lure, swinging it at the end of its own line while the falcon was still attached to the creance. He created a powerful, competing attraction. The bird learned that returning to the human, whether to the fist or the spinning lure, yielded a certain reward, while following its own wild impulse led only to the mild frustration of the line. This progressive training built more than just physical fitness. It built an unbreakable habit of obedience. Every successful flight on the creance wove another thread of certainty into the falcon's mind, reinforcing that the path back to the falconer was always the most profitable course. It was a final, crucial rehearsal, proving the partnership was strong enough to survive the ultimate test of total freedom. The moment of truth arrived in the stark silence of the desert. All the patient weeks of bonding and training, all the careful flights on the creance, converged on this single, breathless act. The falconer stood alone in the vast expanse, the great bird poised on his leather-clad fist. With a deep, steadying breath, he gently untied the final knot, the one that secured the lightweight line to the jesses. For the first time, nothing physical connected the human to the falcon. The only tether that remained was the invisible one, woven from trust, shared meals, and a unique whistled promise. He raised his arm high, offering the bird to the boundless blue sky. With a powerful push of its legs and a snap of its wings, the falcon launched itself into the air, climbing higher and higher on currents of warm air. From the ground, the falconer watched, his heart a drum in his chest. The bird could choose anything in that moment. It could fly straight to the horizon, a speck of wild freedom disappearing forever into the heat haze. It could simply decide it was done with this human arrangement and never look back. Every instinct honed over millennia was telling it to go, to be wild. The falcon circled once, twice, its sharp eyes scanning the empty landscape below. It was testing its freedom, feeling the utter lack of restraint. Then the falconer made his move. He gave a distinct, sharp whistle, the sound that had always meant food and safety, and he swung the lure in a wide, inviting circle. Time seemed to stretch. The bird hesitated for a heartbeat that felt like an eternity, and then it folded its wings and dove, not towards some distant prey, but straight down, a feathered bullet aimed directly at the whirling lure in the falconer's hand. It struck with a soft thud, its talons gripping the familiar prize, and immediately began to feed. In that moment, the partnership was sealed not by force, but by choice. The falcon had weighed its options and chosen to return. This was not a trained animal performing a trick. This was a willing partner coming home. This newfound freedom was just the beginning of a much more specialized education. The Egyptians understood that a single hunting strategy could not conquer the varied landscapes of their world, from the dense papyrus marshes to the open desert plains. Their training was not a one-size-fits-all process. It was a custom-tailored curriculum designed for specific prey. A falcon destined for the rich hunting grounds of the Nile Delta faced a completely different set of challenges than one trained for the vast arid desert. The bird itself, its instincts, and its partnership with the human team were all shaped by the intended quarry. This sophisticated approach reveals an almost scientific understanding of animal behavior and ecology, a system refined over centuries to maximize success in every environment. For hunting waterfowl among the reeds, the falcon was taught a breathtaking aerial maneuver known as waiting on. The bird would be cast into the sky, climbing higher and higher on the thermal currents until it was a mere speck against the sun. From this godlike vantage point, it would begin to circle, its incredible eyes locked on the falconer and his team moving through the marsh below in their papyrus skiff. The falcon's role was one of immense patience and precision. It had to hold its position, hovering in that great expanse of blue, waiting for the crucial signal. Down in the boat, beaters would use poles and noise to flush ducks and other birds from their hiding places in the thick vegetation. The moment the prey burst into the open air, the waiting falcon would transform. It would fold its wings and enter a stoop, a near-vertical dive that could reach astonishing speeds, striking the fleeing bird with devastating force before it could escape back into the cover of the reeds. This technique was a masterpiece of coordinated timing, a deadly partnership between the sky and the water. In stark contrast, the hunt for desert game like hares or even young gazelles required a strategy built on pure, relentless speed across the ground. Here, the falcon's flight was lower, faster, and far more horizontal. The falconer would often pursue the quarry on horseback or from a speeding chariot, the bird perched firmly on his padded fist, bracing against the wind and the vehicle's motion. As they closed the distance on a fleeing animal, the falconer would release his partner. The bird would fly low and fast, using its agility to match the hare's frantic zigzagging or to harass a young gazelle, driving it toward waiting nets or archers. This was not the high-altitude drama of the marsh hunt. This was a gritty, high-speed pursuit where the falcon acted as a swift and agile extension of the hunting party, a feathered missile guiding the prey into a trap. The very fact that Egyptians used falcons in chariot hunts speaks volumes about their confidence. They trusted that a bird, surrounded by the thunder of hooves and the blur of the desert floor, would remain focused on its task and return to a moving, jostling platform. This was not just training, it was the ultimate proof of a bond forged in trust, a partnership so seamless it could conquer the challenges of any terrain. That breathtaking stoop from the heavens relied on a carefully orchestrated performance here on the ground. While the falcon played its part in the sky, another crucial role unfolded within the dense papyrus thickets. The Egyptians employed a supporting caste to flush the game, a team of beaters who worked in perfect sync with the bird above. These were not random servants crashing through the reeds. They were disciplined members of the hunt, often using trained dogs to sniff out and disturb the hidden waterfowl. Imagine the scene from the falcon's perspective, circling silently 1,000 feet up. Below, the beaters and their canine partners move with intentional noise through the marsh, their splashing and shouts creating a wave of disturbance. Ducks and other birds, startled from their safe cover, burst into the open air in a panicked flurry. This was the signal the waiting falcon needed. The sudden eruption of potential prey from the green maze below triggered its deepest instincts, transforming its patient hover into a lethal, high-speed dive. This was not a solitary act of predation. It was a masterclass in interspecies teamwork. The human beaters, the canine helpers, and the falcon in the sky all acted as parts of a single, efficient hunting machine. Each had a specific task, and the success of the entire endeavor depended on their flawless coordination. This complex organization reveals that an Egyptian hunting party was far more than a simple pastime. It was a sophisticated operation that demonstrated their deep understanding of animal behavior and their ability to orchestrate multiple species toward a single, spectacular goal. The bond was not just between one man and one bird, but between an entire team, all working in harmony to bring a piece of the sky down to earth. The royal barge glides silently through the labyrinth of waterways, its prow parting the dense green papyrus. This is no solitary hunt, but a grand procession of power and prestige. A flotilla of slender papyrus skiffs follows in its wake, each carrying a team of beaters with their trained dogs. At the heart of it all stands the noble, a figure of calm authority on a raised platform. On his heavily padded fist, the falcon rests, its hood still in place, a contained storm of potential. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming lotus, a deceptive tranquility before the orchestrated chaos begins. With a sharp command, the noble removes the hood, and the falcon's eyes, now uncovered, take in the vast expanse of its hunting ground. The signal is given. The beaters leap into action, their poles slapping the water, their voices rising in a clamor that echoes across the marsh. Dogs bark and splash through the shallow water, their noses guiding them to the hidden pockets where ducks and geese huddle. The marsh erupts. A flock of waterfowl bursts from the reeds in a frantic, beating cloud of wings and startled cries. It is the moment of truth. The noble raises his arm and casts the falcon into the sky. With powerful, determined wingbeats, the bird climbs, a dark arrow shooting upward, circling higher and higher until it is a mere speck against the bright sun. Then it begins to wait on, holding its position in the great blue dome, its gaze fixed on the scene below. It is the calm at the center of the storm. The noble and his guests watch the sky, their own hearts seeming to pause. Then the falcon acts. It folds its wings and becomes a bolt of feathered lightning, a sheer vertical dive so fast it seems to tear the sky itself. The sound is a brief, sharp whistle of wind through its primary feathers. The strike is instantaneous and devastating, a puff of down feathers marking the spot where its talons meet their target. A single duck falls from the flock, and the falcon follows it down to the water. The success is not just a meal, it is a spectacle. It is a public demonstration of the noble's wealth, his access to these highly trained birds, and his command over a complex, coordinated team. This dramatic display reinforced his social standing for everyone present, proving his connection to the divine order of the hunt and his rightful place in the intricate hierarchy of ancient Egypt. Such a perfect moment was the culmination of a lifetime of patience, a bond forged in trust and executed with breathtaking precision. That same falcon, plummeting from the sky to strike its prey, carried a political weight as heavy as its physical impact. Beyond the marshes and the royal spectacles, these birds were currency in the ancient world's high-stakes diplomacy. A pharaoh seeking to secure a fragile alliance with a rival kingdom or to impress a distant emperor would not send only gold and jewels. He would send a prized hunting falcon, a gift that spoke a universal language of power, prestige, and divine favor. These were not ordinary birds. A falcon with unusually dark plumage, one known for its incredible speed, or a bird that never missed its strike, was a treasure beyond price. To receive such a creature was an immense honor, a sign of deep respect from the Egyptian ruler. It was also a subtle challenge. The gift implied that the recipient possessed the sophistication and resources to maintain such a divine animal, requiring a skilled falconer and a dedicated muse. A foreign court that could not care for the bird properly would be seen as uncivilized, its power and refinement called into question. This exchange transformed a living predator into a living testament to Egypt's cultural and spiritual supremacy, a soft power play wrapped in feathers and fierce loyalty. For the Egyptian nobility, the falcon on the fist was an immediate and undeniable badge of status. To possess one was to announce your immense wealth. These birds required a full-time staff, specialized housing, and a constant supply of high-quality meat, an expense only the elite could shoulder. But more importantly, it displayed a noble's refinement and his intimate connection to the very source of pharaonic power. By expertly handling a creature that embodied Horus, a nobleman visually aligned himself with the king's own divine nature. He was not just a man with a bird, he was a custodian of a sacred tradition, a participant in the cosmic order. Public hunts became carefully staged performances of this ideology. When a noble successfully flew his falcon before guests or the public, he was doing more than catching dinner. He was enacting a miniature drama of Ma'at, the fundamental concept of truth, balance, and order that was the bedrock of Egyptian society. The chaos of the fleeing prey represented Isfet, the forces of disorder and injustice. The falcon's swift, decisive strike was the restoration of divine order. In that single, lethal moment, the noble demonstrated his role as a pillar of that order, a defender of the kingdom's stability under the pharaoh. His personal skill with the bird was a direct reflection of his fitness to rule his lands and advise his king. A failed hunt was more than an embarrassment. It could be interpreted as a sign of personal failing or even divine disfavor, a crack in the carefully maintained facade of control. This symbolism reached its absolute peak with the pharaoh himself. The king was the living Horus, and the falcon was his divine counterpart. Every royal hunt was a potent metaphor for his reign. The wild, unpredictable desert and the chaotic marsh were the untamed forces he was destined to conquer. The falcon was his divine instrument of control, an extension of his own will sent forth to subdue chaos and bring back nourishment for the kingdom. A successful hunt was a public relations triumph, a tangible sign that the gods favored his rule and that Ma'at was firmly established in the land. It reassured the people that their king was powerful, vigilant, and in command. This is why royal falconers held such esteemed positions, and why the training of these birds was treated with such reverence. They were not merely tending to animals, they were maintaining a vital link in the ideological machinery of the state. The health, skill, and loyalty of the royal falcons were matters of national security, as crucial to the perception of pharaonic power as a well-trained army or a bountiful harvest. The bond between man and bird was, on this highest level, the bond between a god-king and the obedient universe, a partnership that tamed not just the sky, but the very concept of chaos itself. This deep bond demanded more than just training. It required a sophisticated form of medicine. The ancient Egyptians protected their divine investments with a level of avian health care that seems astonishingly advanced. We have glimpses of this from their medical texts, like the famed Ebers Papyrus. While it doesn't contain a direct chapter on falcon care, it details remedies for inflammation, infections, and parasites that their skilled falconers would have adapted. A common scourge for any captive bird of prey is bumblefoot, a painful bacterial infection on the sole of the foot. An Egyptian falconer, noticing the telltale swelling, might have prepared a poultice of honey and acacia gum, both known for their antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties, carefully applied to the falcon's tender foot to draw out the infection and soothe the pain. For an infestation of feather mites, he could have turned to powdered natron, the same salt used in mummification, dusted lightly through the plumage to desiccate and kill the tiny pests without harming the bird. This was not guesswork, it was applied science, using the full breadth of their natural pharmacy to keep their partners healthy. The bird's diet was equally controlled and deliberate. These were not scavengers fed on scraps. They received a steady, high-quality supply of fresh meat, often the same choice cuts consumed by the elite. The diet was designed to mimic their natural intake, providing the pure protein and nutrients needed for explosive flight and sharp reflexes. A falcon's meal was a calculated part of its training regimen, its weight carefully managed to ensure it was always eager to fly for the reward, but never so hungry it became weak or desperate. This meticulous care extended even to the bird's most vital tools, its feathers. A single broken flight feather on a wing could ruin its aerodynamics, grounding the hunter completely. The Egyptians possessed a brilliant solution, a technique called imping. If a primary feather was damaged, the falconer would not wait months for it to molt naturally. He would take a matching feather, often saved from a previous molt, and with incredible precision, he would splice it onto the broken shaft. Using a slender sliver of wood or reed as a splint, he would carefully glue the two pieces together with a resin-based adhesive, creating a seamless, functional repair. This ancient art required a steady hand and a deep understanding of avian anatomy, ensuring the bird's flight remained perfectly balanced and silent. Every aspect of their care, from the food they ate to the medicine they received, and the feathers they relied on, was a testament to one simple, profound truth. These falcons were not disposable tools. They were cherished athletes, their bodies tended with a reverence that honored the god they represented and the vital partnership they shared. A master falconer listened with his eyes. In the quiet moments between hunts, the bird on his fist was speaking a silent, fluid language of feather and flesh. A slight ruffling of the body feathers, a subtle fluffing against the morning chill, could simply mean the bird was comfortable and at ease. But that same action, combined with a lowering of the head and a fixed, intense stare, signaled something entirely different, a deep focus and a rising prey drive. The falconer learned to read the nuances in every movement. He watched the specialized feathers on the back of the bird's neck, its hackles. When those feathers lay flat and smooth, the falcon was calm and content. If they began to rise just a fraction, it was a clear sign of agitation, fear, or heightened alertness, a warning that the bird was perceiving a threat. Its eyes, those brilliant dark pools of intelligence, were a window to its very soul. A soft, half-closed look, a gentle blinking, indicated a state of trust and relaxation in the falconer's presence. But a wide, unblinking stare, fixed on something in the distance, meant the hunter had locked onto a target and was mere seconds from launching itself from the glove, whether the falconer was ready or not. Even the way it stood on the fist told a story. A balanced, upright posture with weight evenly distributed on both feet showed a bird that was alert and ready for action. A subtle shift, a favoring of one foot, was often the first and only sign of a developing foot ailment, a problem the falconer needed to address long before it became a serious infection. This deep fluency in the falcon's nonverbal cues was the bedrock of their daily life together. It dictated the entire training schedule. A bird that seemed lethargic, with dull eyes and feathers constantly fluffed even in the heat, was not being stubborn, it was likely unwell. Pushing it to train on such a day would shatter trust and risk its health. Conversely, a falcon that was too sharp, too eager, pacing on the glove and screaming with pent-up energy, was also not ready for a productive session, its mind too wild to focus. The perfect moment for flight training was when the bird was bright-eyed, alert, and just hungry enough to be keenly interested in the reward, a state the falconer could only identify by reading these subtle signs. This constant, quiet dialogue built a relationship that transcended command and obedience. It was a true symbiosis. The falconer, who understood when his bird was tired, scared, or excited, could respond with exactly what it needed: a rest, a quieter environment, or the thrilling spin of the lure. He was not a master issuing orders, but a partner engaged in a continuous, wordless conversation, a dance of mutual understanding that turned the simple act of two beings sharing space into the profound trust necessary to conquer the sky. Even a perfectly bonded falcon was still a creature of powerful, ancient instincts. The training process was rarely a straight, untroubled path to success. Ancient falconers constantly faced the challenge of a bird's deep-seated wild behaviors, actions that made perfect sense in nature but broke the delicate rules of the partnership. One of the most common and frustrating problems was a behavior called carrying. After a successful strike, a well-trained falcon might not return to the fist. Instead, it would fly off with its hard-won prize, landing on a distant rock or tree to consume its meal in peace, completely ignoring the falconer's recall whistle. This was not an act of disobedience, but a natural drive to protect its food from scavengers or other predators. Another instinctual behavior was mantling. The moment the falcon landed with its prey, it would spread its wings wide, hunching over the kill to create a feathered tent, shielding it from any watching eyes. While this looked like a beautiful, dramatic pose, it was a major problem for the falconer, who needed to approach and reclaim the bird. A mantling falcon was often defensive, its talons firmly gripping its meal, and it might even strike out with its beak if the handler came too close. Then, there was the simple, stubborn refusal to fly. A bird perched on the glove, seemingly healthy and alert, would simply not launch when cast toward the lure or a flushed bird. These setbacks were not seen as failures of the bird, but as tests of the falconer's own wisdom and patience. His response was never punishment, for you cannot punish the wild out of a hunter. Instead, he relied on a deep understanding of motivation and a suite of gentle, corrective techniques. The most powerful tool was the careful management of the bird's weight. A falcon's motivation was a precise science. If the bird was too heavy, its crop full from a recent meal, it would feel content and lazy, with no reason to work for food. It would simply sit, refusing to fly, but if it was too hungry, it would become weak, lethargic, and unable to perform. The ideal state was what falconers call being in yarak, a Turkish term for that perfect pitch of keenness. This meant the bird was at its flying weight, lean and strong, with just enough hunger to make it fiercely interested in the reward, but not so starved that its health suffered. The falconer found this perfect balance through daily, careful weighing of the bird on a small scale, learning exactly how much food created the most cooperative and eager partner. When a bird developed a habit of carrying its kill, the falconer would return to fundamental lure work. He would use a special lure with a very small piece of meat tied so securely that the bird could not fly off with it. The falcon was only allowed to eat its full meal while standing on the falconer's own glove, reinforcing the idea that the fist was the one and only place for a proper feast. For a bird that mantled over its prey, the solution was a lesson in trust. The falconer would approach very slowly, speaking in soft, reassuring tones. He might offer a more desirable piece of meat from his free hand, a tidbit even better than what the bird was guarding. As the falcon lifted its head to take this new prize, the falconer would gently and quickly swap the lure or the dead quarry from under its talons. Over time, the bird learned that the human's approach did not mean loss, but often meant an even better reward. A refusal to fly required the falconer to become a detective. Was the bird simply not hungry enough, or was it secretly ill or injured? Was it frightened of something new in the environment, a strange-shaped rock or a passing herd of animals it had not seen before? The falconer's deep knowledge of his bird's body language told him the answer. He might retreat, putting the hood back on to calm the bird, and try again later in a different location. Every problem had a solution rooted not in force, but in a patient reshaping of instinct, a gentle persuasion that the rules of this human partnership were more profitable than the wild laws of the sky. That silent language of trust and patience did not vanish with the fall of the pharaohs. The sophisticated art forged along the Nile became a precious cultural export. Its principles carried far beyond the desert sand. When Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in the 4th century BC, his armies and scholars were not just seizing a territory, they were absorbing a civilization. They encountered a people for whom the partnership with the hunting falcon was a refined, centuries-old tradition. It is almost certain that Greek elites, fascinated by Egyptian knowledge, adopted and adapted these practices, taking the core ideas of imprinting, manning, and the lure back to their own city-states. From there, the knowledge traveled east along trade routes, deeply influencing Persian and Arab cultures, where falconry would flourish into an even more codified and revered art form. The evidence of this Egyptian origin is etched into the very tools of the trade. The fundamental equipment developed by the ancient Egyptians remains remarkably unchanged. The jesses, those slim leather straps around a falcon's legs, are still used in the exact same way. The swivel, that brilliant rotating ring to prevent tangled lines, is a direct inheritance. Even the hood, that masterpiece of psychological insight designed to calm a bird's frantic senses, is crafted on the same principle. Modern falconers, whether in the deserts of Qatar or the moors of Scotland, are using tools that would be instantly recognizable to a royal falconer from Thebes. The basic training philosophy itself is a legacy. The patient process of manning, of slowly socializing a bird to the human world, has not been improved upon. The use of a creance as a safety line for early flights is a universal step. Most importantly, the core understanding that success hinges on a bond of trust, not on domination, is the golden thread that connects every true falconer across history back to the banks of the Nile. They were the pioneers who first looked at a wild predator and saw not a foe to be broken, but a partner to be understood. They laid the intellectual and practical groundwork for a tradition that would captivate kings and commoners for thousands of years, a living heritage that still soars in the skies today, a testament to that first sacred bond between human and hunter. This sacred partnership, a bond woven from trust and patience, was a commitment that did not even end with death. The Egyptians ensured this connection endured for eternity through the powerful, transformative ritual of mummification. A falcon that served a noble in life was often considered a worthy companion for his journey through the afterlife. The process began with a ritual sacrifice, a solemn act meant to release the bird's spirit in a state of purity. The falcon's body was then treated with the same reverence afforded to a human. Its internal organs were carefully removed through a small incision, with the heart, believed to be the center of its intelligence and spirit, often left in place. The body cavity was cleansed with palm wine, a natural disinfectant, and then packed with temporary stuffing to maintain its shape. Next came the crucial step of desiccation. The falcon was completely covered in natron salt, a naturally occurring mixture of sodium compounds harvested from the dry lake beds of the desert. This potent salt was not table salt. It acted as a powerful drying agent, drawing all the moisture out of the bird's tissues and skin over a period of 40 to 50 days. This was the secret to preservation, stopping decay in its tracks and turning the body into a permanent, stable form. After the natron was brushed away, the now desiccated body was anointed with precious resins and oils like cedar oil and myrrh, substances that smelled divine to the Egyptians and also helped to waterproof and further preserve the skin and feathers. The body was then restuffed with clean linen pads and sawdust, restoring its lifelike contours. The final act was the wrapping. Skilled priests carefully wound the falcon in strips of the finest linen, arranging its wings in a graceful, folded position against its body. Its head was often turned to the side, as if in eternal repose, and sometimes a beautifully painted cartonnage mask depicting the falcon's face with its sharp, knowing eyes was placed over the wrapped head. This elaborate process served two profound purposes. Many of these falcon mummies were created as votive offerings, purchased by everyday people and presented at temples dedicated to Horus. By giving the mummy of his sacred animal to the god, a person was making a direct, tangible plea for the deity's favor and protection. Other falcons were buried directly with their human partners, placed in a special compartment within the noble's tomb. In the darkness of the afterlife, this faithful companion would be waiting. It could hunt for its master in the celestial fields, act as his protector against demonic forces, and serve as a living symbol of his connection to Horus himself. The mummy was not a corpse. It was a vessel for the bird's spirit, its ba, ensuring it could live forever alongside the human it had served so faithfully. This was the ultimate expression of their bond, a promise carved not in stone, but in linen and resin, that their partnership was truly eternal. The art of the falconer was not confined to the marshes and the tomb walls. It soared directly into the very heart of Egyptian expression, finding a home in the most intimate of human experiences, love. In surviving love poems, a young man might praise his beloved by comparing her to a master falconer, and himself to the bird that has fallen under her spell. He would speak of being captured by the glance of her eyes, ensnared by her beauty as surely as a falcon is secured by the falconer's jesses. In one poignant verse, a lover declares his devotion, saying his heart is tethered to her, waiting only for her call to return. This was the highest compliment, framing the pursuit of love not as a hunt of domination, but as a sacred partnership built on mutual attraction and gentle control. The poet was drawing on a shared cultural understanding, using the image of the skilled falconer to represent the ideal lover, one who possesses patience, focus, and the ability to earn trust. The metaphor only worked because everyone, from the farmer to the pharaoh, understood the profound bond the image represented. It was a way of saying, "You have tamed my wild heart." This symbolic language extended into the realm of wisdom and moral instruction. Egyptian proverbs and teachings for young scribes frequently use falconry as a metaphor for self-discipline and the pursuit of mastery. A common saying might admonish a student to have the focus of a falcon waiting on, to hold his mind steady and fixed on his studies, ignoring the distractions of the world below. The entire, painstaking training process became a powerful analogy for education itself. Just as a young falcon must be patiently manned, introduced slowly to the chaos of the world until it remains calm, so too must a young man learn to control his impulses and temper his reactions. The unruly mind was like an untrained bird, all frantic energy and wild flights, useless for the precise work of a scribe or an official. True mastery, the text implied, was not about suppressing one's nature, but about channeling it, just as the falconer channels the bird's innate hunting drive into a disciplined partnership. The goal was to achieve a state of perfect readiness, where knowledge could be deployed with the swift, unerring strike of a falcon in a stoop. These literary depictions reveal something far deeper than a popular pastime. Falconry had transcended its physical practice to become a fundamental framework for understanding the world. It provided a ready-made vocabulary for discussing the complexities of love, the challenges of learning, and the virtues of a balanced life. When an Egyptian thought about patience, the image of the falconer slowly socializing his bird came to mind. When they contemplated focused intention, they saw the falcon circling high above, its entire being directed toward a single goal. The practice was a living philosophy, its principles observable every day in the partnership between human and bird. This cultural absorption meant that even an Egyptian who had never held a falcon on his wrist understood the language of its training. They knew that trust was built with food and consistency, that force would always fail, and that the greatest rewards came from a bond of mutual respect. The falcon was more than a bird or a god. It was a mirror, reflecting back the highest ideals of Egyptian civilization, discipline, harmony, and the beautiful, patient art of building bridges between the wild and the civilized, the human and the divine. Hollywood epics love to show pharaohs hunting from chariots with massive golden eagles, but this dramatic image is almost certainly a myth. The ancient Egyptians were practical masters of falconry, and they understood that a gigantic eagle, a creature of immense power and independence, was entirely unsuited for their methods. Golden eagles are apex predators capable of taking down small deer, and their sheer size and strength would have made them incredibly dangerous to handle, even for a skilled falconer. More importantly, their psychology is fundamentally different. Eagles are far more solitary and less inclined to form the kind of intricate, cooperative partnership the Egyptians perfected. Their preferred partners were the true falcons, birds like the lanner or the saker, whose size, speed, and temperament were a perfect match for their patient, trust-based training. This modern misconception stems from a simple confusion of scale and symbolism. While the eagle was a potent symbol of power, the real work of the hunt was done by the more agile, more biddable falcon, a crucial distinction that separates cinematic fantasy from historical practice. Another persistent myth paints the training itself as an act of cruelty, a process of breaking the bird's spirit through deprivation and force. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Egyptian approach was not about coercion, it was about conversation. They were pioneers of positive reinforcement centuries before the term existed. Every piece of meat offered from the glove, every successful flight rewarded with a meal, was a carefully planned lesson in mutual benefit. They did not starve the bird into submission. They managed its weight with scientific precision to keep it eager, healthy, and willing to participate. A starving falcon becomes weak and lethargic, useless for the hunt. A content and well-cared-for bird, however, is a keen and willing partner. This sophisticated understanding of avian psychology is something a modern animal behaviorist would immediately recognize and applaud. The entire system, from the gentle imprinting of a nestling to the patient manning process and the reliable recall to the lure, was built on a foundation of deep observation and respect. The Egyptians knew you could not command a creature of the wind. You could only invite it into a partnership. They replaced the whip with the whistle, and fear with trust, creating a bond so powerful it shaped their art, their diplomacy, and their very view of the cosmos. The proof of their gentle methods is written in the success of the hunt itself, a flawless coordination that could never be achieved with a broken or terrified animal. A modern falconer's glove carries the weight of 4,000 years. The tools may have evolved, but the fundamental conversation between human and bird remains strikingly familiar. We stand in a sun-drenched field with a master falconer, the desert landscape not so different from the Theban plains, as she prepares to fly her sacred falcon. She points to the thin leather jesses on the bird's legs. These are nearly identical to what an Egyptian royal falconer would have used, she explains, a direct inheritance in both form and function. The swivel connecting the jesses to her creance is a modern, machined version, but the principle of allowing the bird free movement without tangling is exactly the same brilliant solution. Even the hood she gently places over the falcon's eyes is a testament to that ancient insight, a tool designed not for control, but for calm. It is humbling, she reflects, to realize she is using equipment whose core design was perfected by people who lived millennia ago. The real awe, however, comes not from the tools, but from the shared philosophy. She describes the painstaking process of manning her birds, the slow, patient exposure to the sights and sounds of the modern world, from cars to lawnmower. It is the very same process an Egyptian noble would have used to acclimate a falcon to chariots and bustling marketplaces. The goal is identical, to build a partner so confident that it remains unruffled amid chaos. She expresses profound respect for those first falconers who, without any of our scientific understanding of animal behavior, deduced the power of positive reinforcement. They understood that trust, not fear, was the only possible foundation for a partnership with a wild hunter. Every time she swings her lure and her falcon returns from a high-speed chase, she is reenacting a ritual that was old when the pyramids were young. The bond she shares with her bird, a connection built on patience and mutual benefit, is a direct echo of that sacred dialogue first begun along the Nile. This is not a lost art, but a living tradition, a thread of understanding that connects her gloved hand to the hands of the first humans who dared to look into the eyes of a falcon and see not a god, but a partner. The desert sun rises over a quiet estate on the banks of the Nile, where our story of a single falcon begins. A master falconer receives a precious new charge, a fluffy white eyas just retrieved from a cliffside nest in the eastern desert. Its young eyes, still dark and curious, see him for the first time. He becomes its entire world, the sole source of food and comfort, offering tender strips of meat by hand while the bird perches for hours on his leather-clad wrist. A unique whistle sounds with every meal, a sound that will soon mean home. This is the sacred work of imprinting, building a bond so deep the falcon sees its handler not as a captor, but as a parent. As the bird's flight feathers grow in, its world slowly expands beyond the sheltered mews. The falconer carries it for hours each day into the bustling heart of the estate, past chattering workers and braying livestock, teaching it through his own calm presence that the human world holds no threat. This patient socialization, this manning, forges a creature of unshakable nerve. Then comes the first test of flight, but with a safety line. A long, lightweight creance is tied to its jesses, allowing the young falcon to fly 20, then 50, then 100 paces to the fist for a reward, the line trailing harmlessly behind, a gentle reminder of the partnership. The falconer begins swinging the lure, a pair of duck wings bound to a cord, and the bird learns to strike this moving target, associating its spin with a guaranteed feast. Finally, the morning arrives when the falconer unties the creance for the last time. With nothing but trust tethering them, he casts the bird into the open sky. It climbs high, a dark speck against the sun, circles once, and then, answering the familiar whistle and the sight of the whirling lure, it folds its wings and dives straight back to his hand. The bond is proven, the partnership is complete. Weeks later, this entire journey culminates in the marshes. The noble stands in a papyrus skiff, the now mature falcon, sleek and powerful, perched hooded on his fist. The air is thick with anticipation. Beachers and other boats move into position, their dogs stirring the reeds. With a nod, the noble removes the hood. The falcon's eyes take in the vast hunting ground. At his signal, the beaters erupt into action, shouting and splashing, flushing a flock of ducks into the air in a panicked flurry. The noble raises his arm and casts his partner to the sky. The falcon powers upward, climbing in swift circles until it is a mere speck. Then it locks its wings and begins to wait on, hovering high above the scene. It holds its position with majestic patience, its gaze fixed on the chaos below. Then it sees them, the ducks bursting from the green cover. In an instant, it transforms. It closes its wings and becomes a living missile, plummeting toward the earth in a near vertical stoop that tears the air with a faint whistle. The strike is instantaneous, a clean, decisive hit on a single duck, a puff of feathers marking the spot. The falcon follows its prize down to the water. The noble guides his skiff toward the bird, which is now mantling over its kill, wings spread wide. He approaches slowly, speaking in soft, reassuring tones, and offers a choice piece of meat from his hand. The falcon, trusting its partner, lifts its head to take the tidbit, and the falconer gently reclaims the duck, slipping the jesses back into his grasp. The hunt is over. From a helpless nestling to a master of the sky, this single, seamless narrative weaves together every thread, the bonding, the training, the trust, and the teamwork, into one breathtaking moment of triumph, a perfect echo of an art perfected thousands of years ago. That single falcon, soaring over the marshes, brought together the entire universe of ancient Egypt. Its journey from a wild nestling to a divine hunting partner was a microcosm of their civilization, a perfect blend of faith, power, and profound understanding. This is far more than a royal sport or a practical way to put food on the table. Egyptian falconry existed at a sacred crossroads, a place where religion met politics, where science danced with art, and where the human spirit reached out to touch the wild. It began with the awe-inspiring belief that the falcon was the god Horus made flesh, a conviction that elevated every aspect of its care into a religious act. This divine connection was then harnessed by the state, where a successful hunt reinforced the pharaoh's power and a gifted bird could secure a crucial foreign alliance. The training itself was a sophisticated science of animal behavior, a patient system of positive reinforcement built on keen observation and a deep knowledge of avian medicine. And this entire practice was immortalized as art, captured forever in the vibrant tomb paintings and elegant hieroglyphs that allowed this incredible story to survive the millennia. The bond between the falconer and his bird was the golden thread that wove all these elements together, proving that true mastery comes not from domination, but from respect. It was a philosophy of partnership that shaped their view of love, discipline, and the very order of the cosmos. So the next time you see a bird of prey circling high in the sky, remember the ancient Egyptians who first looked up and saw not just a hunter, but a kindred spirit. We would love to hear what surprised you most about this deep dive into history's mysteries. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to keep uncovering the lost secrets of the past.